Margot, Gal, I think you better stop doing that. I've got a show to get ready. So, what were Walter Hamada's plans? After Andy Muschietti's The Flash movie? Let's get into it. Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. Why do you shout, mate? Because I want to. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. I'm a screamer like your mum. So very warm welcome to... What day is it? Margot and Gal have put me off. That was so good. What is it? Thursday. It's Thursday today, right? Yeah, it's definitely Thursday today. So welcome to Thursday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Not a good start. What were we going to talk about again? Oh, yes. I've just given myself a headache. Oh, yes. We are talking about Walter Hamada's original plans after the Flash movie. Number one, the plan was, in the new timeline, after the Flash movie, for Ezra Miller's Flash to be the #1 lead character of the Justice League and the new DCEU timeline. No Henry Cavill's Superman, no Ben Affleck Batman. So basically, what was the plan? So the idea was we were going to be in a timeline. Sasha Calle's Supergirl, Michael Keaton's Batman would be canon in the new DCEU timeline. So following the Flash movie, we were getting Blue Beetle on HBO Max. That was the original plan. Batgirl on HBO Max. They were not going to be released cinematically. Now, you've heard rumours of maybe getting a Batman Beyond movie. The Batgirl movie was actually the official bait and twisted, if you like, Batman Beyond movie. Batgirl was going to be trained by Michael Keaton's Batman in that film. Michael Keaton was going to be in the film for about 15-20 minutes. Not very much, but he was in that film. He was going to be Barbara Gordon's mentor. Leslie Grace was playing Barbara Gordon. That's a film that's already been made and shelved. They took a tax write-down on it. Insane, right? So as far as we know, we'll never get to see that film. But who knows? Piracy is a crime, everyone. I'm not saying I've seen it, but piracy is a crime, everyone. Don't do it. Cool. Would I be allowed to do a review of the Batgirl film one day? Wouldn't that be fun? Anyway, let's carry on with today's current video. So those films would be out there. So there's a post-credit scene in the original idea of the Flash movie. And in fact, there's a whole section of the Flash movie that, thanks to James Gunn, is going to be cut. As I say, it's Sasha Calle as Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, and Michael Keaton as Batman Bruce Wayne in the new timeline after Barry and those two people have had an adventure already in the Flashpoint universe. Now they're all canon. They're all back together. Barry can't believe it. And Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne turns up at the courthouse as we're about to find out the fate of Barry Allen's dad. And it's okay. He gets released at the end of the movie. But does he get released at the end of the movie? In the new version, I'm sure everything will be all right with that. So they are canon. But that whole sequence now has been cut. But yeah, the idea was for this new timeline to make the Flash a proper lead hero in the new DCEU timeline. All that's gone. That's crazy. I think that's going to hurt the movie, but I haven't seen that version yet. But I have seen that original ending. It's a pretty good cliffhanger-y ending. And I think it's done really, really well. Because imagine, your world has changed and all of a sudden people that you met who are not supposed to be part of this universe are there. And Superman has vanished. And, Barry Allen in the DCEU is a big Superman fan. He loves Henry Cavill's Superman. He's not around anymore. Can't find him in the Flashpoint universe. Can't find him in this new universe, which is supposed to be the original timeline, but it's not. That was the original plan for Walter Hamada. So after Batgirl on streaming and Blue Beetle on streaming, we were heading for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And I've mentioned this before, that Michael Keaton also cameos in this movie. That was the original plan. I've seen his cameo in a test screening of that movie. And as I've said many times, it's fucking amazing. It's actually better than anything he does in The Flash. If you liked what he did in The Flash, and I loved what he did in The Flash, what he does in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is really, really cool. It was just great to see him in that movie. So again, I assume we're not going to see that, but you don't know. They could be so desperate for that movie to make money that we actually do see it. So there is a post-credit scene in the original Hamada plan for the Flash movie. There's obviously going to be post-credit scenes for the new version of the Flash movie, but we don't know what they are. No one's really seen them yet. But the original post-credit scene was of Batfleck kind of doing a reverse version of the scene that Barry Allen does with him in the Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice movie. But this time, it's Batfleck that comes to Barry Allen saying, "You've got to find us. You've got to find us." That was a lead-in not to a Final Crisis movie, but to the Flash sequel. If Walter Hamada remained, he would have greenlit, even before the release of the Flash movie, near the release of the Flash movie, a Flash sequel, where Barry Allen uses the Speed Force to find the heroes that have vanished from the original timeline, to find the original timeline, or wherever Batfleck and Cavill's Superman and whoever else has vanished from the original timeline. That was the idea. Now, I don't know if Cavill's Superman was going to be in it, but for sure I think Batfleck was definitely going to appear in the Flash sequel, because Ben Affleck has got a really strong relationship with Warner Brothers, even after the shit that happened with Justice League, and even though Ben was telling everyone to walk off the set when Joss Whedon was going absolutely crazy and nuts and insane, he still had a good relationship with people at the studio. He still has a fine relationship with people at the studio. So Ben Affleck was going to play a really big role, a bigger role than he did in the first Flash movie, in the Flash sequel. That was the plan. Now, I don't know if they were using Darkseid. I don't know if they were going to finally set up the Final Crisis story in the Flash sequel, and maybe the third Flash movie may have been a proper Final Crisis movie. I don't know what they were planning. Where did this Final Crisis rumour stem from? It's actually true. This was Walter Hamada's plan. Well, Zack Snyder teased it because he had a picture of a turkey. Do you remember it on Vero? And at the back, he just showed us the Final Crisis graphic novel. So that was always happening. But why was Zack Snyder hinting about that? Was he going to be involved in some kind of eventual Final Crisis movie? We'll never know, considering that he and Warner Brothers really fell out. And by the time he released the Snyder Cut, he was saying that Warner Brothers are anti-Zack Snyder. He was being very, very blatant in a video interview, if you remember it. So probably unlikely, but that's where we were going with the Hamada-verse. The Flash was going to be the main hero. No Superman. We were getting an Elseworld Black Superman under Hamada, and J.J. Abrams was producing that under his new arrangement with Toby Emmerich and Warner Brothers Pictures. So Superman was going to be black. We were going to get a black Clark Kent. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates was supposed to write a screenplay and write that movie. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates isn't a director. He's barely a writer, but they were obviously looking, I think, for a female woman of colour to direct that movie. I think that movie was going to be a very, very inclusive movie, let's put it that way, so we can be as polite about it as possible. So that's the kind of direction they were going in the Walter Hamada universe. And the DCEU was not going to have a Superman. So James Gunn and David Zaslav and, Peter Safran have gone and reversed that decision from Hamada, because the first cinematic theatrical event is a Superman movie called Superman Legacy. that not only sets up Superman for James Gunn's brand new DC universe, he will world build and introduce his version of these iconic DC characters. Something that's very, very exciting. But what do I think of Walter Hamada's plans? It seemed to me that there was more plans for streaming movies. You see, they weren't going down the MCU Disney Plus TV series plan. They were making movies for HBO Max. Strategically, HBO Max was going to get into the DC movie business. Batgirl, Blue Beetle, and I'm sure they had many, many more things planned. They planned a Green Lantern series for HBO Max, as has James Gunn. But James Gunn's Green Lantern TV series is dramatically different to what they were planning originally with Hamada. But they were going mostly movies for DC on HBO Max, but they didn't seem to have many plans cinematically and theatrically for Walter Hamada's new DCEU timeline. They only literally had a Flash movie sequel, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom planned. They didn't seem to have many plans cinematically, because I think that Jason Keeler really wanted to take WB to the streaming platform and take their business away slowly but surely from the theatrical system. Of course, this was rejected by the consumer. Christopher Nolan went absolutely ape shit. I think you remember all that drama during the COVID pandemic as well. So that plan hasn't worked out. So they're re-embracing the theatrical system again. And of course, that's a right and proper decision. I want to see my superhero fare on the big screen, then eventually on the smaller screen on streaming with physical media. That's right. There is a place for streaming. I do believe streaming, and like this industry, is in a financial meltdown right now. And I think ad-free streaming platforms are the future. I think Netflix in the end will be not ad-free. Sorry, let me rephrase that. No, I think ad-based streaming services are the future. And I think Netflix will be an ad streaming service in the end. Now, they're going to introduce an ad-based service, but I think in the end there will be no kind of subscription services. You'll just be able to go on there. You won't even need to sign on. It will be free. And I think, that's what's going to happen. And I think the future of the industry is the theatrical system and the old-fashioned television system. But there'll also be these kind of things like Freevee and things like that available as streaming services. And I think that is the future of streaming. And streaming isn't going to be the future. It's going to be the big thing. But it's going to be there for you if you want it. Maybe that's more of the future of television, but I still think the old-fashioned television system with a big box and networks have a bigger future than they once did before the pandemic. That's my prediction. Don't doubt me. I say a lot of shit that haltingly becomes true. So Walter Hamada's plan was an interesting one, if not a flawed one. Embracing streaming over the theatrical system isn't the greatest of ideas. Batgirl being a baited and switched version of Batman Beyond, again, wasn't the best of ideas either, was it, if you ask me? That would have been controversial. Hardcore Batman Beyond fans weren't going to accept that. But every time you hear someone telling you the rumour that Walter Hamada wasn't as bad as you think he was because he was going to do a Batman Beyond movie, saying, nah, all he was going to do was going to do Batman Beyond in a Batgirl movie using Batgirl as the Roy character. This was their plan. There was no other, articulately made, faithful adaptations of Batman Beyond. That's what they were doing. That was the future. This is where this industry is today. Batgirl is very current year. Batgirl wasn't shelved because of a lack of quality at the end of the day. It was done because they needed the tax write-off and because it was very, very problematic, and it would have been very problematic to the fans as well. And it doesn't matter how many people are upset about it shelving, that's the reason it was shelved. Now, Blue Beetle proves the point that Batgirl wasn't shelved because it wasn't good enough to be released in movie theatres. Just tell me this. How can Batgirl be made for streaming but not good enough for movie theatres, but Blue Beetle was made for streaming but is good enough to be released in movie theatres? Make it make fucking sense, Mr. Zaslav. It doesn't make any sense. Why didn't they try and take a tax write-off on Blue Beetle as well? That's very, very interesting. They clearly think that Blue Beetle has a chance, firstly, of making money via the theatrical system. Maybe Blue Beetle and that version and that actor have more of a chance of being part of the future in James Gunn's brand new DC Universe timeline. Who knows? But obviously that film, firstly, has to make money. If Blue Beetle and the actor playing Blue Beetle, playing Jamie Reyes, don't resonate with the audience, then he and that franchise will have no future either. But it's not that important for this year's movies to play a part in the future. As far as Warner Brothers Discovery are concerned, all that matters is that they make money. Black Adam didn't make enough money. It cost too much money to make. It made a lot more fucking money than Fury of the Gods. But, making more money than Fury of the Gods isn't a success story at the end of the day. So Shazam! Fury of the Gods was a flop. Black Adam was a flop, like it or not. Spin it as much as you want. Just because you like The Rock, because he brought Henry Cavill back, doesn't mean he's a good guy. Doesn't mean he made a particularly great movie. I don't mind Black Adam, but the general audience hated it. And that's why it didn't make enough money, and it was dead. If Black Adam makes $1 billion, Cavill's back. Simple as that. It's all about the money. To the studio, Black Adam proved that Cavill's money, let me say it again, Cavill's Superman didn't have enough people interested in him. Now, a lot of people have said, well, how can you judge a few seconds, post-credit scene? Well, they're saying he was there. If people were excited enough, people would have watched. That more people would have gone to see the Black Adam movie. Of course, problematically, we all got to see mostly, Cavill's return online. And that was enough for most of us. So it wasn't done in a good way. Plus, they purposely leaked the fact that Cavill was going to be in it. Purposely, hint, hint, wink, wink. We knew. It was obvious. It wasn't much of a surprise. Anyway, it didn't work, and Henry Cavill is history as Superman. Whether you like it or not, or I like it or not, this is where we are. But this is why the DCEU has always been a clusterfuck from day one. Badly handled from day one. It doesn't really matter if I like the Snyderverse. It was basically bringing the guy who made Watchmen to, lead the Superman and Batman movie division isn't exactly the best of ideas. Even though I love what he did with those characters, it's not what people wanted, generally. They're the facts. It didn't work, and they've been trying to dig their way out of it ever since and failed. Now, James Gunn should be able to make these characters and this brand new franchise that he's building up a lot more successful than people who have come before him, because he's a measured guy. He seems to know what people want. Now, yes, look, there are some negative things we can say about James Gunn. He's never made $1 billion movie, but people did enjoy his Guardians trilogy, as we've discussed before. Guardians and Superman and being in charge of a whole universe that you're molding together are two different things. And he's got a different challenge on his hands, and he's got to succeed where others have failed. Many others have failed for many different reasons. But it is very, very interesting. As we discuss what Walter Hamada was going to do, let's discuss what plans James Gunn has for the character of the Flash after the Flash movie. So will he stick with a sequel for Ezra Miller's Barry Allen? I think no matter how successful or unsuccessful the Flash movie is, that ain't going to happen. If it were me, and if I was a creative, at this juncture, knowing the controversial issues with Ezra. No matter how successful their movie is, I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. I wouldn't be recasting Barry Allen. Maybe I'd use Ezra sparingly, but what I would do is my main The Flash would be one of the other versions of the character from the comic books. It can be Bart Allen, it can be Wally West. There are so many, multiple versions and editions of the Flash in the comics. So you don't actually have to use Barry Allen. But the mainstream audience only know Barry Allen because of the DCEU and because of Arrowverse. But to the Flash fans, they would be more than happy and more than excited to use, like multiple versions of the Flash, but another version if you just want to have one version. But if you really want to go mad with the Flash, there's so many exciting things you can do. You can start again, you can have Barry and Iris having a bunch of kids and lots of versions of the Flash, or you can have one different version of the Flash. And I feel that this is the way that James Gunn will go with the Flash. He's going to introduce a brand new version of the character in the new timeline, which won't be Barry Allen. This is something also we've discussed before. I think this is what James will do. Now, will this different version or versions turn up in Superman Legacy? More than likely, yes. I think that's exactly what they're going to do. So I don't know if he wants to use Ezra Miller. I don't know if he will use Ezra Miller. If it were me and I didn't want to just cut him off, and that would be a difficult decision, do you cut Miller off totally and just do up this new version of the Flash, different version of the Flash, not Barry Allen? Or do you still use Ezra Miller? I suppose that depends how successful or unsuccessful this upcoming movie is, but that would be my take on it. That I would definitely be going a different direction, and you could definitely just dump Miller at the end of this Flash movie in another timeline, in the Clooney timeline, and then start again with another different version of the Flash, and then go down the line and maybe introduce a brand new Barry Allen in the future, maybe in 5 years' time, when the whole controversy with Ezra Miller and the whole kind of, discussions of this upcoming film have gone. But considering this is a film that sets up the new timeline, maybe they will want to use Miller sparingly, and I'm okay with that. But I don't think Miller is going to be the main Flash. But I do think, you could do two things, actually. You could just leave the Flash for many, many years and not touch the Flash. But the Flash is an important character in the Justice League. And I don't think, it's a bit like Mira. I don't see why Mira should be hurt because the actor playing Mira is hated by the audience. Do you know what I mean? Mira is an epic character in DC if you know your DC. If you want to be inclusive and, represent women in the right way. And I do think with Mira, James Wan did represent Mira in an epic way in the first film. I think she's still quite awesome in the second film, even though she's not used as much because of the controversies around Amber Heard, but she's still a little bit awesome in that movie. I can tease that to you exclusively today. I personally think Amber is a brilliant version of Mira, but it's clear we can't go forward with her, just like we can't go forward with Ezra Miller front and center with the Flash. That's obvious, and I think James Gunn understands both situations. Wouldn't it be funny if James cast his wife as Mira? No, I'm joking. Actually, I like his wife. I think do I like his wife? No, listen. I think she's an okay actor. I think she does a good job as Amelia Harcourt. Look, she's going to continue playing Amelia Harcourt in the new DC universe, and I'm fine with that. And she was my wife, and if I was James Gunn, I'd be giving her work. Why wouldn't you support your wife who's also an actor? She's a good actor. Amelia Harcourt is a solid character. No, I don't think she should be in all these cameos. I think they only did it with Shazam because they were desperate. They had nothing else because new plan, no actors in place. That's why they did it. She does it as a favour, and James kind of helped out as a favour. And I don't think that's a bad post-credit scene. I don't mind her cameo in Black Adam either. So I think the only people who dislike, James's wife, good wife by the way, and solid actor, being involved are the Snyder fans who hate James Gunn. I don't think anyone else has an issue with it, and I certainly don't think it's that gotcha that people think it is. So I'm fine with that. But I think we do need a new Mira, because you don't need the controversy and you don't need people threatening to boycott your movie. She has to go. She has to go. Johnny Depp was fired from Fantastic Beasts for much less. The guy didn't even do anything wrong, and just because she decided to stand up and say a bunch of things about him, he went. But as I say, I think Amber's been a perfectly great Mira, and no one can ever take that away from her. But yeah, I think we're definitely going with a different version of The Flash, and I think that's what James Gunn will do. I think this is the right thing to do. I think, clever decisions have to be made. I think it's like, even though I was utterly upset, in stages of thinking about Henry Cavill being removed as Superman, when I sit here and I think about it from James Gunn's point of view, and people are not going to like me for this, I think it's a sensible decision to recast Superman. But it doesn't mean you won't see Henry back as Superman. I think we are getting a kind of Spider-Verse into the Spider-Verse kind of thing with Superman Legacy, and I think we will see Henry Cavill as Superman, maybe Brandon Routh as Superman. I think this could be something that they're doing, considering that James says Superman Legacy honours the previous versions of Superman movies and Superman in live action. So I think they may use the multiverse in this movie, and maybe that's why they'll use a version of The Flash. What excites me about Superman Legacy, not that it just sets up a brand new version of Superman, that it world builds James Gunn's new DC universe. I like that. That's also what excites me. Now, some people are going to say, oh yeah, you're going to have all these characters in it, and use it as a negative. And if you want to use something as a negative, if you want to say, if you fill up a glass full of water, but you say it's still half full, right, or half empty, and you want to be negative about that, that's up to you. I think people will be very pleased with the cameos, but just like the introductions and the world buildings of what James is going to do with this movie. I can love Henry Cavill, I can love Zack Snyder, and still appreciate James Gunn as a creative. We are in an era and a culture right now where it's pick your side. It's one thing or the other. And at the end of the day, I don't want to pick a side. I don't want to pick a side from James Gunn or Zack Snyder or Henry Cavill and the new guy they're picking as Superman, or Amy Adams or the new gal they're going to pick. I can tell you, the gals they are actually auditioning, yes, we're going to get a great Lois, we're going to get a great Superman, and this is exciting. So I can like Zack Snyder, which I do. I adore Zack. I love the Snyderverse. I think it's outstanding. It's just a shame it wasn't as part of some kind of Elseworld that had nothing to do with bringing in the general audience. Zack's no good for that. Zack said it himself. He doesn't give a shit about the general audience. But James Gunn can appeal to that audience. James Gunn likes that audience. And, the general audience don't care about James Gunn's tweets. I'm sorry to tell you this, they don't. I don't like the tweets. They're definitely problematic. But at the end of the day, they don't break any laws. As distasteful and disgusting as they are, they don't break any laws. Ezra Miller broke laws. Remember that. I mean, look, we can punish every single fucker that does the wrong thing, does badly, morally, bad moral things. We can. But I think once people break the law, that should be it. But I think when people do things that are definitely morally questionable, I think we can kind of forgive those things and say, do you know what, James? They were bad jokes, but they were a long time ago. And you just need to learn, mate. And I do think that he has an ability to create a DC universe we can be proud of. But also, he needs to set up a DC Elseworlds we can also be proud of. And hopefully, James can do that. So that is the direction I think James is going with The Flash, using a different version of The Flash. And it has been interesting today talking about what Walter Hamada was also going to do. But what Walter was going to do was highly controversial, problematic, and to me, it felt rather empty. This has been Thursday's edition. It is Thursday, yes. This has been Thursday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. I met your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. It's okay. Margot and Gal are no longer there. They left a long time ago. Wow, I missed them already. So smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. Smash the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen!